Now that we've gone through all the primal movement patterns, shown you the different variations on them, I'm going to talk about the assessment or analysis form. And this is where it really becomes important for clients coming in as a coach. Obviously, your goal is to help make sure your clients have the best tools in place and that you are able to evaluate where they are. From the movement analysis side, for me, it's been such an important part of my business and helped me convert clients into or prospects into paying customers, as well as I use the analysis, the functional movement analysis, as a tool as much for me as it is for the client. A lot of assessment protocols out there, there's not a lot of coaching involved. It's like, can you do this? Can you do this? Yes, no. FMS is great for that. We have FMS on our system right here because it's quick, it's easy, it's objective. You get a number. That there's a fantastic role for that. My functional movement analysis is not that in any sense. Sure, we're going to come to the same conclusions or pretty similar conclusions as we would through an FMS, but there's a whole other component to it, and that's the coaching side. The value of something like FMS comes later down the road where you're doing all the correctives and you're able to modify. That's what we're getting from here. So when we do our functional movement analysis, we start off on this side. This side of the sheet, you'll have your handouts, you can check on it. We've got a posture section at the top. Quick and easy. We're not using lasers or plumb lines or anything like that. It's just observational. Have them stand in what they think proper posture is, make our notes, and we've got all kinds of different notes you can check off and write other things in the side. The next section is the most important part. I will spend most of the movement analysis in this area. There are many times where we don't get past here because I'll talk about this section in a minute, but if we don't know how they're moving in each of the primal patterns, none of this stuff really matters. We start off with bracing. Teach them the bracing protocol that we talked about, the bucket of water, the lines, all those things are really important. Then we go into breathing. Can they breathe properly? Diaphragm, belly breathing, whatever you want to call it. Can they do that while they're bracing? Teach them the prospect of that, or the aspects of that. Then we have our 7 primal patterns: squat, lunge, hinge, rotate, or rotate and anti-rotate, gait patterns, push and pull. And the push and pull we do overhead as well as horizontal. That, pretty straightforward. Notice how it's just blank? We make some notes, make your comments, use what version of the variation of the movement pattern we did to analyze them. If you're working with an Olympic gold medalist, you're probably going to do more advanced variations on the movement analysis than you would for someone who's a senior and has all kinds of medical issues and conditions. You can work with anyone who has a body and then they can support themselves. It's just a matter of finding the right version of that movement to challenge them. That's what this form's all about. Once we know how they're moving, if they're moving great in some patterns, they've got some challenges in others, that's really normal. We see that all the time. Doesn't mean you can't challenge them in the areas that they're doing well in. So here we say, okay, we call this foundational strength, or loaded lifts. There are a couple examples down here, such as squat and deadlift and an overhead pushing or pulling series with load. All it is taking this and saying, let's add a little bit more challenge to it. Let's make it more difficult. Let's see what happens when we push the envelope a little bit. And now we're not saying we load them up with 1,000 pounds, but if someone can get into the right shoulder position overhead, let's practice it with a little bit of load. Can they do an overhead loaded carry? All right. Can they go through a range of motion and still get there? What happens to the system when you add challenge to it? Because a lot of times people move great here. As soon as you add load, wheels fall off the wagon and all kinds of things start to come out that we didn't see with their own body weight. So now we get that bigger picture perspective. By the time we get down to here, this is the flexibility section, we pretty much know how well they're moving. We've seen their range of motion because all these movements we're doing through their functional range of motion, what they're able to accomplish. We're going to notice if they have any areas of tightness or weakness. But here, these are just some more objective measures that we can. We have a whole range of different things that we can take people through, and we just measure difference between right and left side, the angle that they get to in that joint. It's not critical. This is by far the most important part, because if we do this right, we will know a pretty good idea here. And yeah, we might want to quantify a couple of those things, but overall, this side of the sheet is where we spend the bulk of our time. And within this side of the sheet, it's this top half that we spend most of the time. There are lots of clients that I know I'm going to see on a regular basis where I will spend most of the first 5 sessions I see them with in this area, just going through the patterns. If I know I'm only going to see someone for 1 session, I will make sure I get through all of it, but we're not going to be able to go as depth into the movement patterns. And that's fine. I explain that to them. This side of the sheet, the back side of the sheet, is, we call it the objective measures. Subjective side, objective side. The objective measures are body comp, girth measurements, height and weight, their age. Those things are up here. And these are more like we're just setting a milestone and marking those milestones as people come in. At the bottom here, I call this more of an objective measure, as well as the FMS. What's their score? How are they doing on each of the different analysis units? I love FMS. It's a great program, but again, it's very different than what we're teaching here, because we're doing the coaching side. We're looking at the specific movement patterns. A lot of the movement patterns that are done in FMS are very standardized, structured, and they're not necessarily directly transferable to what people would do in a gym setting, in a sports setting, in day-to-day life. And that's what this is. We want to make sure people are moving well. We call it training for the sport of life. That's what this is all about.